All right, so let's now have a conversation around that. Here in studio, joining me right now is Abel Oyeyo. He is from the Center for African Progress. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, I mean, this Trump order or reaction has gotten quite a number of mixed reactions. First of all, do you think it was well thought out?
Yeah, I think it was carefully, thought about, and the execution was okay, and it was timely. I watched what happened in Syria, of course, the chemical attack, and the suffering is just unwarranted. It was horrific. It was not. Yeah, I think it's high time that something like this had to happen.
But then, is this going to sort of like begin the ending of this situation, this war that has now been about 7 years old now?
Yeah, I think the reason as to why Assad has been able to be so bold in his misbehavior is lack of this kind of response. Of course, Obama was a bit soft. He gave a red line at some point. Assad crossed it. There was nothing. And I think he was confident the Americans were not going to be, let's say, proactive in trying to stop him from whatever he's been doing. So I think this is going to send a message to him that he's not going to be unchallenged in whatever he does. Also, of course, it sends a message to Russia that you cannot support a dictator who's hurting his own people, and then, you expect the world to just stand by and watch. Yeah.
And we'll get to Russia's response and reaction shortly. Yeah. But before then, what does it say about Donald Trump? Is this maybe one of the first things that he's done that is quote-unquote remarkable so far since he took office?
Yeah, and I think it's likely, it's very bold, and I think it's likely to give him some kind of positive review back home. Of course, he has so many problems, domestic problems, of course, again, connected to Russia. And it becomes, I think, some kind of turning point.
Right.
Because the Democrats have been hammering him so hard of working closely with Russia during the elections to get him elected. And you see now what he's done is totally a violation of what the Russians wanted to, to see happen in Syria. So it's going to give Democrats a problem in linking him to the Russians.
Right.
So it's done. I think it's a bright move, political, of course, and of course in terms of the humanitarian crisis in Syria, it's a good response.
Let's talk about Russia. This, of course, is not going down well with Russia, and they had already started to warm up to each other since he took over office. What kind of impact will this have on U.S.-Russia relations?
Now, I think that goes back to the same reset button that existed when Obama was in office. The Russians have always wanted to find a way to go back to the Soviet-U.S. kind of a standoff. But of course, you realize Russia is a small country. It doesn't have the economic might and even the military might of the U.S. It's some kind of dream Putin has that is not going, of course, to be realized. So, and I think most likely expected Trump to be soft on the way he deals with Russia. But Trump is, I think, someone you cannot predict. Yeah, so when he sees something he needs to respond, he's going to respond. And the guys, I think, who were part of the National Security Advisory team now, very different. I don't think they're going to watch Trump warm up to Russia at the expense of things like what's happening in Syria now. So it's going to be tough for the U.S. again to go back and work together with Russia. Yeah.
Let's talk about Russia in this. If you compare what they have to lose by losing, a warmer U.S., what is in store for them if, of course, this cold relationship goes and becomes something else?
Now, I think that is going to be, I don't think it's going to hurt the Americans. It's going to be, I think, some kind of negative outcome for Putin. He's always used his, let's call it remerging power of Russia to get some kind of popularity to succeed politically. So it's going to create problems inside Russia, not in the U.S. Of course, at the end of the day, we're likely to see some kind of confrontation for a while over Syria. But I think because of the coalition that has been created by the U.S., talk about Britain, talk about France, talk about Japan, the big nations are together with the U.S. in this kind of response, Russia and China will be isolated at the end of the day. And Russia stands to lose. And that is, of course, a big blow to Putin himself.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Russia. Will they now maybe, like you said, this is a turning point, will they now maybe rethink their involvement in this whole war in Syria? Or is it likely to just be status quo, the way it has been so far?
Now, they rushed to Syria and expected, of course, to have some kind of quick results for Assad to stabilize him and keep him in office. But I think they've been given a very, very tough time by the guys who wanted to topple the dictator. So I don't think they're going to... It's a war they've lost. They've not accomplished whatever they wanted to in Russia. In fact, they moved some of the equipment away from Syria. So they have to pull out. So what they're going to do is to find a way to save face and then take off. So the eventual solution of the Syrian problem will have to be done by the US and the coalition forces, the Britons and maybe the French. They'll have to move in, support the rebels, and then push Assad to the table where you'll have to have a plan whereby you'll have to relinquish power at the end of the day.
All right.
So the Russians might not have a big say. They'll of course protest and make all the noise, but I don't think they're going to.
There's nothing much.
Yeah, they can
all
do.
Right.
Yeah.
Finally, as for this particular topic, let's talk about that air safety agreement that Russia had with the US. Now it has been suspended. What does this mean, in layman's terms?
That was meant to make sure the Americans and the Russians did not, have a conflict, maybe leading to even casualties and that kind of an issue. But I think over a period of time, the Russians were given the time they needed to do whatever they wanted to do. They've not been able to do that. And under their protection, the Syrian dictators done so much that has been, of course, negative. So it's now their duty to move away from Syria and let Americans do what they've decided to do, which, of course, is meant to safeguard the lives. Assad is, killing every single day. Now, the problem is the Russians have talked about supporting the air defenses of the Syrians.
Yes.
So that is going to create some tension and some potential confrontation between the Americans who are doing the work on the ground, on the Syrian airspace and the Russians. So they have to, at the end of the day, sit down and avoid escalation, which means there has to be communication between Russian airmen and the Americans so that there's no kind of clash which can lead to further chaos. So
this whole situation does not mean that communication between the two countries has completely gone south?
That cannot stop.
Cannot stop?
It has to go on for purposes, of course, of avoiding more problematic situations.
Conflicts.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Abel. We'll be coming to you later on for some other analysis on other stories that have taken center stage across the world. But for